So today, if you guys have any questions or comments, please feel free to speak up at any time if something pops up that you want some information on. Definitely casual as we share this information. Our main objectives are to kind of briefly go over brain health. I mean, there's a lot of components included in brain health. Again, as I said, focus on dementia care, so looking at some information on dementia and then risk reduction strategies related to brain health, and then to share some information on resources that are available to you through Parkview Senior Services. So now I'm going to let Cassie, if I don't boo-boo it, right here.
Yep. Okay, so I brought with me a little activity that we utilize in one of our Train the Brain classes. We have a senior exercise specialist on staff, and he designed special classes focused at older adults and some of the things that you need to maintain as you age actively. One of them being your brain health, which is the purpose of today. So he graciously lent me one of his activities that they do in his class that focuses on processing. So I'm going to be that person who asks you to stand up out of your chairs and get to know your neighbors for a few minutes with me, if you don't mind. So that's just one of the activities that our Train the Brain course works on. There are about 50 different class activities that are actually performed each week. Is a different activity in Train the Brain. So no class is ever the same the week after. They're all focusing on different pieces of information. So we just wanted to kind of get your brains firing before we start talking about some information. And I love icebreakers and making people uncomfortable, so you're welcome.
And I won't be doing any of that, I promise. But it reminds me of that, is it Bop It game that kids play? I am horrible at any of those where I have to mimic the activity of others, so
Well, I did it last week in a room of adults that the youngest age other than my own was about 65, and I consecutively heard how I was yelling, "High five," about 4 seconds before everyone else. So it really puts into perspective just how the brain ages with information too.
Okay, as we know, I mean, the brain is a very complex organ, the most complex organ, and the job of the brain is to help you basically process the environment around you. It helps you to get through everyday life, to process new information. You retain information, you learn, we learn how to respond to others, concentrate. And the overall goal of the brain is to maintain an active and clear mind, which I don't know how many of you can attest to. It's definitely challenging in the hustle and bustle of today's world. I feel like every day there's new things introduced that are making it harder and harder for us to really focus on one thing at a time. I mean, we have cell phones and emails, and it's just constant information overload. The youth of today tend to like it, but for those of us that are a little more set in our ways, it's definitely challenging. It is important, obviously, as our brains age, there's changes that occur that can affect all of these things. So how we manage information, how we use our logic and judgment, our perspective, and then wisdom. I like to think that wisdom comes with age. My teenagers would disagree, of course. So as we age, I mean, there's a lot of changes that occur throughout the lifespan of an individual. We tend to think of older age as coming with a lot of cognitive or mental changes. For descriptive purposes, older adult refers to an individual that's 65 and older. And no, I did not make that cutoff age. That was established by, I believe, Medicare guidelines a long time ago. It's one of those things that people tend to question me about. But it is the age where we start to see more rapid decline in areas. That doesn't mean that certain conditions that we'll talk about here in a little bit are normal parts of aging, but there are expected changes. Memory can change. I know when talking to my great-grandmother as a child, she could tell me the greatest stories from her past, but if I ask her, you know, what she had for breakfast, she'd have trouble remembering it. Those are just kind of the more natural things that we see. Finding words can become difficult. See, I already have that problem. So if you have these problems, please don't think that they're abnormal. When we look at things like dementia or Alzheimer's disease, that's where it's multiple factors that are occurring every day. Attention span, I think, again, with all the technology we have today, that's something that definitely poses challenges to a lot of us. but there are definitely opportunities to help to keep our brain as healthy as possible as we age. We hear a lot of things. As a volunteer for the Alzheimer's Association, we do special education events, and we'll have booths set up, and as soon as people see the word Alzheimer's, they tend to kind of make a big loop around our table. Nobody wants to stop. We'll hear sometimers, not Alzheimer's. People tend to look at their loved ones, maybe they misplaced the keys, and we're self-diagnosing people as having some type of cognitive impairment. There's just a lot of things that can come into play. The most important thing is trying to take care of your brain as you age. So when we talk about things that aren't normal part of aging, believe it or not, dementia is not a normal part of aging. I've taught classes where unfortunately many people in the room thought that dementia was just part of getting old. That is definitely not the case. I think there's a lot of confusion with dementia because we hear so many different terms. So how I try to describe dementia, basically it's kind of an umbrella term. It's talking about loss of memory and other intellectual abilities that affect your everyday life. So your ability to complete tasks such as bathing, shopping, cooking, going to the restroom, and it's affecting those things consistently, which get worse over time. When we see these things occur, we have to again remember, there's a handout I think that's on the back of the table there, discusses these 10 signs that are common with dementia or Alzheimer's disease. We have to remember, just because you see one or two of these red flags does not mean that there's a need to worry. Again, these things are kind of a common process that we see. It's when there's an impact that's affecting everyday life. So when we look at dementia, it is those signs and symptoms that are listed on the sheet. I believe there's 10 of them on there. It's describing a different types of cognitive disabilities. So Alzheimer's disease, we hear that one most commonly. I'll have people tell me, I don't have dementia, I have Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease is a type of dementia. So I think that's where some of the challenges come in. The big thing remembering, I mean, memory loss, probably one of the most common things we think of when we think of dementia or Alzheimer's. What else comes to mind when we think of this? I know she made you guys answer. Get up and move around. What do you think of? What's one word that comes to mind with dementia?
Repeating the same thing.
Yes, definitely. What about changes in personality? Changes in mood? I mean, we see lots of different stories on TV or in movies. Language. I mean, dementia can progress to the point the person's not able to communicate at all. They're not able to understand us or then to communicate with us. So there's a lot of perceptions about dementia out there. I think one of the reasons we're seeing an increased prevalence of dementia, one of the things I find most startling is there's a new case every 3.2 seconds, a new case of dementia in the world. That is huge. So 1 in 9 people, they estimate, have a type of dementia currently. And when we think about the fact that the baby boomer generation, they're reaching the age of 65. So those individuals born between 1946 and 1964. We had a large amount of births during those years. So now we're seeing about 10,000 people in the United States alone turn 65 every day. So risk of dementia increases at 65, so that's why we're seeing more and more cases of dementia. Yeah.
You had a side note on the previous slide that is different from delirium.
Yes.
Are you going to tell us what that is, or can I ask?
I'll go ahead and do that now. I don't want to forget. When we look at dementia, true dementia is an irreversible progressive disease, so it gets worse over time. Delirium is something that we'll see usually in the hospital or an individual that has some type of infection. It's a short-term condition. A lot of times, especially with older adults, maybe they come into the hospital with a bladder infection or pneumonia. It can be something as simple as pain that's not being managed. And basically it kind of throws off their mental abilities because as we age, our brain can handle less and less stress. So we apply, certain factors, a new environment, pain, something as simple as not being able to go to the bathroom, infection, new medications. It affects the brain's ability to function, and the person can become more and more confused. So we can see some of those same symptoms, but once we correct the problem, if it's pain or an infection, those symptoms subside. So there's a lot of confusion with that. We'll see people come in and they think, oh no, grandma has suddenly developed dementia. Dementia does not suddenly develop, it develops over time. Delirium develops over usually a course of a few days. So definitely something, and it is serious as well, and something that has to be taken care of. That way we can find the cause and treat it. Does that answer your question? Okay. Okay. Dementia, as we know, one of the major causes of disability in the elderly, and the 6th leading cause of death. So a lot of people think that dementia does not cause death. But if you think about it, you know, when we have our brain, it's kind of like a factory. And what happens in a factory, if one production line goes down, eventually it's going to affect all the other lines that are down from that area. So the area of the brain affected slowly affects the other areas of the brain, to the point that if these individuals do not pass away from, you know, an infection or something along the way, their brain shuts down, they're no longer able to ambulate, they're no longer able to speak, and the body just slowly shuts down to the point that the individual would eventually pass away. So it is definitely a disease that leads to death. Definitely a costly disease. If you think about all the individuals with Alzheimer's, dementia, any of those that are being cared for, I mean, we see them in the hospital all the time, definitely because of different situations. But then you have to think about the caregivers. I mean, if families caring for them, they're missing work, they're maybe taking them to some type of daycare or respite home. There's just a lot of fees that can be associated with dementia. And then unfortunately, we're also seeing an increased rate of early onset dementia. Have any of you ever heard of early onset dementia? Definitely a scary form of dementia. This is a dementia that we see before the age of 65. I'll never forget a patient I had. I want to say she was like 52 with dementia. The challenges there, or if we don't recognize that that individual has dementia, we definitely put them at risk of injury, other types of harm. So it's one of those things that can be hard to truly understand what's going on with the patient, but this is a more familial type of dementia, something we'll see in families over and over again throughout generations. Now, when you hear, there's a lot of confusion. Again, I've said a lot of confusion a lot of times, but dementia is definitely challenging because of the media that's out there. We see articles come out all the time about dementia and things that cause dementia. Like I said, true dementia is irreversible. When we see cases of a person who has the symptoms of dementia, some of the things that can be reversible would not be a true dementia diagnosis. Something as simple as depression. When we see depression, especially in older adults, you're socializing less, you're not taking care of yourself like you normally would, you're socially withdrawn, can kind of lead to some confusion because you're not being stimulated by the environment around you. Medications, I don't know if any of you have ever had a reaction to any type of medication, but they can definitely make you confused. I've seen this in a lot of patients, especially with pain meds, medications we use for mental health as well. Any type of metabolic change in the body, one of the things that we look at when we're looking for possible causes of confusion is the thyroid, looking at those levels. I don't know how familiar anyone is with dementia in individuals who use alcohol frequently. A lot of those individuals come in with extreme confusion, and what we'll see are changes in nutrition, of course, kind of comes with that. So that's where you'll see these individuals getting high levels of nutrition because deficiencies in things like vitamin B12 definitely can cause confusion. Any untreated problems that affect your circulation. So, you know, we need oxygen to survive. We need our blood to flow appropriately to survive as well. Dehydration causes confusion. Infections, kind of leaning towards that delirium diagnosis. So these aren't a true dementia, so just be aware of that. Now, when we look at the irreversible forms, here's where I was saying the umbrella term. So dementia, again, that umbrella that's over all these different types, Alzheimer's disease being the most common type of dementia that we see, vascular dementia, individuals that have their cardiovascular system's been affected. Maybe they've had a stroke. Anything that decreases blood flow through the brain, of course, can have an effect on brain health. Lewy body dementia is a newer type of dementia. Parkinson's disease, unfortunately, a lot of individuals that have Parkinson's disease go on to develop dementia. Sometimes we see the opposite, dementia leads to Parkinson's type symptoms. There's a dementia, frontotemporal dementia. Go ahead.
I've never heard of Lewy body.
Basically, when we look at Alzheimer's disease, has anyone heard like plaques and tangles, or what we hear, the causes in the brain that cause Alzheimer's disease? When we look at Lewy body, it's a type of protein called the Lewy body that affects the brain. So it's just looking at the different causes, basically. Lewy body dementia is definitely challenging, and there's a lot of different treatments that we have to look at with regards to some of the behaviors that we see in these individuals. Same with frontotemporal dementia. When we're looking at these, it's basically the area of the brain that's affected. So if you look at the structure of the brain, you know, when we look at our emotional center, our reasoning and processing center, that's where we'll see the different symptoms associated with the type of dementia. It's definitely challenging.
Is the frontotemporal is what we'll see in athletes, like football players?
Yes, there is. We see repetitive head injuries. There's a lot of research right now looking at those individuals. So maybe those wrestling, I've seen some things with cheerleaders even, and having those same injuries to an area of the head. For one, it can cause delirium. Delirium is a risk factor for dementia later, but then the injury to the head as well. So looking again at that area of the brain depending on the type of sport. So we do hear a lot about that. And I know there was a famous, was it wrestler that, I'm not into sports, I hate to say, I can't remember who it was that actually went on to develop dementia, and that's what it was. Family noticed the changes in personality because those repetitive head injuries. And then believe it or not, there's at least 170 other conditions. I definitely could not even begin to name them that we have discovered that fall under that dementia umbrella. Okay. The handout that I gave you, this is the 10 signs. So this is the things, these are the things that you're going to be looking at if there ever is a question of any type of dementia, maybe in a loved one. Please be cautious with using this list because, again, on any day, I feel like several of these may affect me. It's those things that are continuously affecting the individual to the point they're not living at their normal quality of life. So if you have questions, that's definitely something that you would want to, speak to your family about, speak to your physician about. Don't use this as a kind of one-size-fits-all approach. When it comes to risk factors, because we hear this, if anyone does approach our booth at any of the events that we do for the Alzheimer's Association, it's how can I prevent it? The number one risk factor for dementia, age. So your risk doubles every 5 years after the age of 65. So that's where we'll see the amount of individuals with dementia as their age goes up significantly increases. And then family history. So these are things we can't change. We can't alter our age, we can't alter our family history. However, it's important to recognize these things. That way we can be more aware in our loved ones and ourselves. And then when we look at family history, making sure, if there is especially a significant family history, make sure you find out some more information about that and share with your physician. And then as you mentioned, the head injury, heart disease, alcohol abuse, and then again down to some things we can't really control, Down syndrome, Parkinson's disease. But when we look at the heart disease, the alcohol use, stroke, that's where we can look at those risk factors that we can have some type of impact on. So ultimately, it comes with everything we're hearing today. We have to focus on keeping our bodies healthy and our brains healthy. So there's 4 categories that they've looked at that can help reduce your risk. The other handout has some more information and some references and resources on there if you want some more information. We know physical health is important. I like to think that when we consider things such as our brain, that's a pivotal part of everyday life, that can kind of help to push you. I will admit I don't exercise as regularly as I should, but that's definitely a huge thing. If we can keep our body healthy, keep ourselves moving, that's what's going to help us to maintain that brain health, physical health that we need. Diet and nutrition, again, I will admit I'm not very good in this area either, but making sure that we maintain a healthy body weight, trying to limit our sugars, limiting our intake of alcohol, smoking cessation, definitely important, because when we look at these things, all of it is affecting your blood flow. So anything that would be related to hypertension, diabetes, any of those things, because they're affecting the blood flow through your brain. And then making sure that you maintain some type of social engagement and activity, keeping your brain active. It's easy sometimes to just want to kind of sit down and relax. We have to make sure we stimulate our brains, whether it's through things like crossword puzzles, any of those brain busters, anything, learning new things. I mean, reading magazines, anything you can do to stimulate your mind, it should definitely be something that you're working on. And then again, maintaining social engagement. I think especially for older adults, it's harder. Maybe you're not able to drive, it's harder to get out of the house, but maintaining social activity is definitely important. It requires our brain to interpret the environment around us. It requires us to be able to not only communicate to somebody, but to understand the information that they are providing us with as well. So that sheet has some of these things on there. Exercise, again, doesn't have to be anything overly complex. You don't have to have a gym membership. Walking is a huge way to exercise. It's simple, it's easy to do. I see people, excuse me, walking around the mall, walking in safe areas in your neighborhood, simple exercises at home. Nowadays you can go on the internet and find a lot of different exercises that are only a few minutes out of your day. Never stop learning. Smoking, there's a lot of resources here in Fort Wayne to help with smoking cessation. It does affect blood flow, which again is going to affect your brain. It increases your risk of heart disease, increases your risk of stroke, and all these things again are tied into brain health and dementia as well. Eating healthy, there's lots of healthy options out there. I hear a lot of times eating healthy is expensive. I tend to agree to a point, but it's making sure that you're kind of planning your meals, you're looking at what your options are, and you try to avoid fast food. I know that's hard. I myself run constantly, so I feel like sometimes it's the only option, but that's where you have to kind of be more creative in what places you're visiting. Protecting your brain, head injuries, falls, making sure that your house is, safe from, fall risks. So looking at things like cords on the floor, something as simple as rugs, because we see people come in with head injuries that can definitely affect them for the rest of their lives. So anything you can do to keep your head safe. If you ride a motorcycle, wear a helmet, bicycle helmets, wearing your seatbelt in the car, and then getting adequate rest. I always have to laugh at that one. They recommend 7 to 8 hours of sleep at night. Trying to maintain some degree of sleep consistency is definitely important. And then mental health. To have a healthy mind, you kind of need a happy mind. So making sure you're speaking to your physician about anything you may be struggling with, because those things tend to pile on, and it's kind of just this cascading effect where we see depression lead to a lot of other things. So making sure you're addressing those. That was super fast and kind of a lot of information, but to summarize, brain health and dementia all into this limited time is definitely challenging. Are there questions that you have before Cassie finishes up with some resources? Has anyone in this room been affected by dementia? A loved one, friend? Definitely can be challenging. I do encourage, if it's something that, an individual that's close to you and you're struggling, please reach out to the Alzheimer's Association. They have support groups, they have educational activities, because sometimes we just need somebody to tell us that what we're doing for this individual is okay. And there's never a silly question there. It's definitely a learning process. And then if you have any questions after, I'm happy to point you in the right direction too.
So I'm going to talk just a little bit about what it is that we do as part of Parkview Senior Services. I passed around our brochure application, which is what we give out to individuals who might be interested in getting involved. So I realize not everyone in here is of age, sorry ladies, to be a part of the group, but everyone usually has parents, grandparents, or family friends who might be. So you probably recognize it. That's this little pamphlet here that I laid out for you. And then we also gave out one of our previous newsletters that we distribute bi-monthly to all of the members of our club as well, just to help you see what it is that we do through our seniors club. So one of the biggest focuses of Parkview Senior Services is the educational portion, which Lindy talked about, the importance of keeping your mind active and educated and engaged in things. So you will notice if you look through the newsletter that we typically provide 1 to 2 educational opportunities for free each month out to our club members. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, we are a club of 3,000 and growing. Our club has one rule. You have to be 50 years of age or older. So Lindy touched on the early onset when she was talking about dementia and how there is that case where you can start to see it in your 50s and early 60s. Because of some of the influences we've seen as healthcare has shifted over time, we previously used to be a 55 or older club. We did change that to 50 or older, and I am happy to say we do have several 50, 55, 60 members in our club who are engaged in different various things that we're doing. Our educations usually feature our nurse specialists, our doctors, or anyone in the community that we feel has information that's extremely valuable to our older adults. We hold them just like this, like a lunch and learn. Sometimes it's just a educational opportunity. We engage in Allen, Whitley, Huntington, Kosciuszko, and Noble. There's also a presence in LaGrange, and they are working on one in Wabash as well. But the 5 communities that you're going to see associated with the Allen County chapter, if you will, are going to be your Kosciuszko, which is in Warsaw, Noble, which is in Kendallville, your Whitley, which is Columbia City, and then Huntington County is housed within Huntington's Parkview location. I coordinate for Allen County, which is about 85 to 90% of our club membership. I also am the one who does the newsletters and a lot of our marketing and outreach and things like that for the club. So most of what you'll see in there are things that we have pulled from various different resources as needs in our community or needs with the population that we're working with. On top of that, we focus on that wellness piece. So I mentioned at the beginning when we were all high-fiving 70 times in a row that we have a senior exercise specialist. His name is Jim, and he works at the Parkview Health and Fitness Center, which is on 3000 East State Boulevard. It's just down the road from Parkview Randalia. He has a senior wellness center inside of the fitness center where he teaches his classes regularly. And if you look through the newsletter, there is a page that's solely dedicated to the classes that Jim is teaching on a regular basis to our club members. Anything from arthritis and balance to train the brain to senior stay strong, weight classes. But on top of that, we have other degreed exercise scientists that we utilize in that building to teach additional courses. So we like to offer up fun things like cha-cha chair and cardio classes and yoga and tai chi. And then again, you can see, and it's in the newsletter as well, there are benefits out at some of the other locations, for example, Huntington and Noble as well. We do also partner with our Center for Healthy Livings, who do a lot of that as well. Yes?
If someone lives in Wells County, they can still come to like...
Yeah, I allow anyone in who wants to be in. We have Ohio individuals who come across to come to activities. And before Wabash was kind of getting its feet wet, we had a lot of folks who wanted to go to Huntington's activities. If you look at the brochure application that I laid out for you, the very back page, there's like a sliding fee scale. You'll notice that we only charge members for the months that they, and that would be the little trifold one. It's the smaller one. We only charge members for the months that they're actually going to be here and be active in whatever it is that we have going on. So, I mean, you can renew at the beginning of the year and we offer special rates for that, or you can join midway through and you're only, again, going to pay for the months that you're actually utilizing it. It's a one-time fee. So right now it's like, I think $8.75 if you want to join in the month of June. That covers you all the way through the rest of the year. What you get with a membership is you get that newsletter bi-monthly. You get a discount guide with over 100 businesses in the area that we've partnered with for discounts. You get access to that fitness center and to Jim and his classes and a walking track in that building as well. And then we also offer discounts at Parkview in the cafeterias to our members as well. And lots of various other things as they pop up and I'm able to strike a deal and offer them out to our members. But that's also helped to engage those younger crowds because someone who is 50 is not always looking for the same activities of someone who is 73. And so we try to offer things that span across those decades so that we're all engaging in something along the way. Our biggest focus is to provide a healthy and active, enriched lifestyle for you as you age. So if you peruse through that little newsletter, you're going to see that those activities vary. Outside of the wellness opportunities and the educational opportunities, we do focus on the socialization piece and also volunteer opportunities for those individuals who participate in our club. So we do bus trips, we do tin caps games, we do potluck carry-ins, we do a large holiday party at the Miro Center every year for our members. We hold about 600 people at that event and we have a beautifully catered meal and live entertainment and door prizes and just really creating a community because even though we have a lot of husband and wives that are a part of our club, we have a lot of new widows. We have a lot of transplants who moved here because no more family was left where they were at and they came to be closer to their kids and they know no one. So we are a way to introduce them to that. Outside of that, we participate in other community activities that we also give opportunity back to our club members for. So for instance, I mentioned the Senior Information Fair at the very beginning. I am the volunteer chair for that. And so what we have since started to do in my role with that is all of my volunteers that I take are older adults. And they either come from our club or they come from Parkview's bigger volunteer base, which is mostly older adults at this point as well. So we try to give out some different volunteer opportunities for those who aren't working but still want to be engaged in what's going on in their community. I also teach freedom from smoking or smoking cessation. So that's another way that we're trying to touch on some of those key points that Lindy was speaking about. So they're under the umbrella that Senior Health Services is community well-being. So we focus on a lot of different things, my focus being the older adult community. So smoking cessation is one thing that we offer out at various different locations throughout the year for free. As part of our initiative, we don't charge at all for anyone to take that eight-week course through Parkview. Yes?
Do you have any opportunities for like the walking track, maybe up off of DuPont or something? You know, we're part of another group of senior things, and we can walk for a minimal price at Speaks.
Sure.
I need something on that side of
Yeah.
town instead of way over here on State. I thought the Y at DuPont would be great, but
yeah, we don't have anything yet. It's definitely a conversation that we've been having, but it's not something that we have established at this time. So for the longest time, Randalia was kind of the hub for senior services. And I've been in this role, this is going into my second year. And so since we've been here, that's been part of our outreach is to grow beyond that piece of town. So hopefully coming in the future, but unfortunately not quite there yet. On top of smoking cessation, we also out of our department do things like advanced care planning. So living wills and your healthcare reps. Maris, who is our department secretary, her and I both are facilitators for that, and we do that for the hospital as well as part of our department initiative. Man, I feel like I'm probably missing a million other things. I mean, we have, Lindy and I both, as well as Maris, we participate internally with educating Parkview, because we do have 11,000 coworkers who are outreaching in many different places all day, every day. And so part of our initiative over the last year and a half has really been to create continuity of care within our health system, because at some point or another we see most or all of you for something somewhere. So we've tried to really educate internally on older adult care, older adult health, how to get involved. And so that feeds directly back into us. But I have a resource background. So prior to this, that was the type of position that I held, running a resource center for older adults here in town. So we feed that through our department as well. Probably this morning before I came here, I think I had 3 phone calls for everything from where do I get my mammogram to I need my toenails trimmed. So really whatever question anyone comes up to us, that we're charged with trying to find the answer for you. But I encourage you to share this information with anyone. Lindy has already given you the facts as to why it's important. So then this is just a little bit of material for you to understand what we're doing on the forefront of that initiative to help, you know, combat some of that. I had to do that little Train the Brain activity. So just a little bit of background on that. Train the Brain addresses some of these key points: the long-term memory, the short-term memory, processing speed, which was the activity you did with the waving and everything like that, problem solving, reasoning skills, and language skills. So those are some of the things that his classes focus on. So he does everything from your actual physical health to your mental health in his classes, depending on what you take. And then Maris and I work on filling in the blanks in between and offering what other kinds of courses and things like that we can. Constantly finding new ways to deliver information to our older adults and get them involved and engaged with one another.
And if anyone has ideas, I mean, you're welcome to share that information with either of us, as well as to things that we can look into. Like she said, they fall under the, what do we call it?
Community well-being.
Yeah, community well-being. So there's resources for people of all ages. I encourage you, you know, to look at the website. And if you're not finding something that you need, if you have access to a computer, which nowadays a lot of us do, get out there and Google, because for school a project I did was looking at community resources. You can get simple lab tests done at the pharmacies in town. So if you're worried about your cholesterol levels or there's something you're worried about, there are ways to get things done. I didn't know those things even existed. There's minute clinics in pharmacies. There's a lot of things out there that people don't realize and we don't utilize regularly. So, you know, when in doubt, try to find something, give, you know, one of us a call and we can try to help as well, because there's a lot out there, especially for the, you know, activity. There's exercise things that I've seen out in the community. There's all sorts of resources. So definitely don't be afraid to look or ask if you need this information.
If you're curious to know more about what Senior Health Services is doing, or the Center for Healthy Living that I kept mentioning, Parkview did just launch a whole new website setup, and so it's simple to navigate. If you just go to parkview.com, across the top it's going to tell you different categories you can click on, and when you do the drop-down tabs, it'll say like Seniors Club, Center for Healthy Living, Women's Health. Once you click on those, it tells you not only where they're located, how to get a hold of them, but a pretty good description of everything that we're doing, as well as many other departments that could be focusing on something that you might need assistance with. But as Lindy said, I mean, we filter phone calls all day, so if you have questions, our information specifically is in the materials that I've given you if you ever need to call in and ask for a connection, or how to find something, or if you want materials mailed to someone you know that you think could benefit from getting more involved in what's going on in the community around them.
Does anyone have any questions or anything they want to share real quick before you head off into your busy days?
Down syndrome, and he's like 20 years old, and I've never thought of Down syndrome as being something for dementia, because I always think of that as older, because Down patients usually don't live a super long time, right? So how does that correlate to dementia?
I can't give you 100% 100% specific answer because it's not really an area I've focused a lot in, being, like you said, a lot of those individuals don't make it to older age. But something along the lines of the changes in the brain that they see, I think it's definitely an unfortunate thing. I mean, they already have a lot of struggles ahead of them. But to see that at that age, I think for one, we don't recognize it very often because of the barriers that are in place. But as to the exact physiology behind it, I'm not 100% sure. Honestly, it was something that I came across probably about a year ago when I was kind of exploring outside of older adults. Definitely something intriguing, but I have not done a lot of research on that. So I wish I had an answer for you, but it's definitely something we're seeing more and more, I think probably as we're screening for dementia.
Well, maybe it's just like everything else. Everybody else is getting, the rates are rising anyways.
Yes, and when we look at any of those, Parkinson's, all those that are affecting the brain, I don't know if it's just something with the area affected, and over time, like we said, kind of with the factory, it's affecting more and more areas. I wish I had a better answer, and I probably will go home and research the rest of the evening now so I have that answer if it's ever asked again.
Other questions?
With the nutritional piece of dementia and all that, with the dimensional piece of dementia, do you talk much about foods that help short-term memory? I've heard like cinnamon is one and different things like that.
There's a lot of information out there on foods. I don't typically focus on the nutritional pieces because we have dietitians and nutritionists throughout the organization. But one bit of advice that I can give you is just make sure that whatever literature you're looking at is credible information. I think if anything, the most I see are the things to avoid. For a long time, they said not to drink soda out of a can because it could cause dementia. We see things about artificial sweeteners. Just be cautious of that. What I have seen is looking at things that we know are healthy foods, lean meats like fish, blueberries, I read, a lot of those type of pieces. And I think, I don't think I included that one. There is a handout that has like the most recent literature that if you want, I can get your email address and send it to you. Because it definitely had helpful pieces, but you just have to take everything you read with a bit of caution because there's been a lot coming out lately that I won't say isn't the most credible information, but still needs additional research for sure.
Do you think the rise in numbers is just because we're more aware of it now?
I would say probably. I mean, especially when we look at anything, look at ADHD in children. How many cases of that do we see nowadays? So I think it has to do, one, with we're screening for it more. There's an increased awareness definitely in the community, in the medical field, but then the changes in the number of older adults. I mean, now is a time where we're seeing more older adults than younger children. So that's definitely not the common theme. So in my opinion, it's probably both of those, but I think the large population of older adults is definitely contributing to it.
What's the impact for the autistic adult?
That I haven't read much on either. I wish I had these answers, especially now being asked. But I definitely can, if you want, I can look into it and provide you with information. It does definitely kind of limit because my focus has always been 65 and older. And again, kind of with Down syndrome, we don't encounter a lot of those things.
Autism, not Down syndrome.
Yes, yeah, but typically, again, in the area I work in a medical surgical population, so we don't see a lot of individuals on the floor with autism, so it's not really something I can speak to.
Would it be on parkview.com?
I don't know what information we have as far as the specifics.
I don't know if there would be like research education based information out there, maybe more internally available to she and I, which would be a good way for Lindy to maybe connect with you after. I don't know if they put all of what is available to us out on the general site.
Especially when it comes to two conditions affecting one another, because there's a lot of times a lot of information you'll get kind of tidbits on one and it'll just touch on the other component. But I'd be happy to look into both of those for one, because, you know, like we said, continued learning is definitely important to brain health, but then also for my own information as well. So if you want to leave an email, I will happily dig and find some credible materials for you.
Let's give them a round of applause.